Listen closely, because I'm only saying this once. Your back isn't growing. Not because you're not in the gym, you're in the gym. Not because you're not doing rows and pull downs, you're doing those too. It's because you're doing them wrong, in the wrong order, with the wrong logic, on the wrong schedule. You've built an entire pull day around movements you don't understand, and the result is a back that looks exactly the same as it did 18 months ago. Today, that changes. I'm going to give you the pull day that actually works, built on biomechanics, not bro science. Pay attention or don't. Your back will tell the difference. Let's start with the schedule, because if you're on a bro split, chest Monday, back Wednesday, arms Friday, legs never, I need you to understand something. You are voluntarily choosing to make less progress. That's not an opinion, that's physiology. Here's what's actually happening inside your muscle when you train. Every time you subject a muscle to mechanical tension, the only real driver of muscle growth, by the way, you trigger a spike in muscle protein synthesis. Your body starts rebuilding and reinforcing that tissue. The problem is that spike doesn't last forever. It maximizes and then returns to baseline. If you're only hitting your back once a week on your sacred back day, you are leaving days of potential adaptation completely untouched. The solution is hitting each muscle 2 to 3 times a week. This keeps muscle protein synthesis elevated more consistently across the week, instead of one big spike followed by 5 days of nothing. Your muscles don't need a week to recover from a well-programmed session. They need 48 to 72 hours. Bro splits exist because they're easy to remember and they make you feel like you did something. That's it. There is no physiological argument for them. Train each muscle 2 to 3 times a week, respect the 48 to 72 hour recovery window, and your frequency problem is solved. Moving on. Now let's talk about the upper back, your traps, your rear delts, and the movement that actually builds them, because I've seen better form in a CrossFit highlights reel than I see from most people doing rows. The upper back requires a wide grip and flared elbows. I'm not asking, that's biomechanics. When your elbows are flared out at roughly 60 to 90 degrees from your torso, you are placing yourself in a position that maximizes horizontal abduction. That alignment puts the line of pull directly through the traps and rear delts. That's what you want if you're targeting the upper back. That's the whole point. Now here's where most people destroy the movement. They do half reps. They pull the bar or handle toward them, feel a little tension, and reverse it. They never fully retract the scapula at the end of the rep. They're getting maybe 60% of the movement and calling it a set. The scapular retraction at the end of every single rep is not optional. It is the contraction. Without it, you are just bending your elbows and swinging a weight. The traps and rear delts are responsible for retracting the scapula, pulling your shoulder blades together. If you're not reaching full retraction at the end of every single rep, you are not training those muscles through their full range. You're just doing a slightly exhausting impression of rowing. So here's what a correct upper back row looks like. Wide grip, elbows flared 60 to 90 degrees. Pull the weight and at the end of the movement, drive your shoulder blades together completely. Hold it for a beat, then control the return all the way to full stretch. That's a rep. Everything else is cardio with extra steps. Now here's where I get to watch people's brains short circuit, because everything I just told you about retracting the scapular for upper back, throw it in the bin when you're training lats. I know, you've been squeezing your shoulder blades together on every pull down and every row since day one. Someone told you to really contract the muscle at the top, and you listened, and your lats have been moderately annoyed about it ever since. Here's the science. Scapular retraction is a function of the traps, not the lats. The lats do not retract the scapula. The lats adduct the humerus. They pull your upper arm down and toward your body. That's their job. That's the movement you need to train. When you retract your scapula during a lat pull down or a close grip row, you are actively recruiting your traps into a movement that is supposed to isolate your lats. You are diluting the stimulus. You are taking tension away from the muscle you are trying to grow and handing it to a muscle that already got its session. For lat-focused movements, the scapula stays neutral, not retracted, not protracted, neutral. Your focus is entirely on driving the elbow down and toward your hip. Close grip rows and wide grip pull-downs are your primary tools here. The grip and elbow path naturally de-emphasize the traps and keep tension where it belongs, on the lat. If you've been training back for years and your lats are still flat, this is probably why. You've been training your traps twice every session and wondering why your back looks like a wall instead of a V. The biceps are a supinator of the forearm first and an elbow flexor second. This matters more than you think. When your palm is facing up, supinated, the bicep is operating at its highest mechanical leverage. It can produce the most force, which means the most mechanical tension, which is the only thing that actually drives muscle growth. Supinated curls are your primary bicep movement, not because they look cool, because they are mechanically superior for bicep development. Hammer curls and reverse curls exist for the brachioradialis and brachialis. When you move to a neutral grip, palms facing each other, or a pronated grip, palms down, you actively reduce the biceps' mechanical advantage. The brachialis and brachioradialis become the primary movers. These are not lesser muscles. They add thickness to the arm and fill out the forearm. They deserve direct work. Now, the swinging. Let's address the swinging. When you load more weight than you can control and use your lower back, your hips, and what appears to be your entire personality to get the weight up, you are not doing a bicep curl. You are doing a full-body momentum transfer. The bicep is barely involved. Momentum has taken over the load, and mechanical tension on the bicep has dropped to nearly nothing. You have created an expensive cardio session for your ego and achieved almost no hypertrophic stimulus. Strict form, control the weight. If the weight is moving on its own, the weight is too heavy. Simple.
Here is the part that will make you deeply uncomfortable. You are probably doing too much. 2 sets per exercise. That's where you start. Not 5, not 4. 2, at 0 to 2 reps in reserve, meaning you are stopping the set 1 to 2 reps before absolute failure. And before you close the video in protest, let me explain the logic. The only driver of muscle growth is mechanical tension. Progressive overload, getting stronger, lifting more, is simply the measurable sign that the adaptation is happening. Your job is to create enough mechanical tension to trigger that adaptation, recover, and repeat. You do not need volume for volume's sake. Now, what happens when progress stalls? What happens if you've been on the same weights for 3 to 4 weeks, or you're actually getting weaker? Most people add sets, more volume, more work, and they get worse. Because stalling and regression are signs of under-recovery. Your body is already telling you it cannot keep up with the demand. Adding more volume adds more fatigue on top of a system that is already behind. The adaptation diminishes, you dig the hole deeper. The correct response is to remove a set or add a rep to your reserve, meaning back off slightly from failure. Reduce the demand, let the system recover fully, and watch the progress resume. Doing less to grow more is not a paradox. It is the only logical response to under-recovery. Rest periods matter here too. 3 to 5 minutes between sets for bilateral movements. For unilateral movements, one limb at a time, rest 1 to 2 minutes between each side. While one side works, the other is passively recovering. The total systemic demand is lower. The reason rest matters is not complicated. Your central nervous system needs to recover between sets. Your heart rate needs to return toward baseline. If you're jumping into your next set while still breathing like you just ran from something, your CNS is still compromised, your output will be lower, and the mechanical tension you generate will be reduced. Short rest doesn't make you hardcore, it makes your next set worse. One question: how do you know if you're actually training hard? Not did it burn, not did I get a pump. Here's the real metric. Is the bar slowing down involuntarily toward the end of the set? Burn and pump can happen early in a set. They're metabolic byproducts. They tell you about blood flow and lactate, not about whether you're close to failure. Involuntary velocity loss is different. It only happens when the muscle can no longer maintain the force required to move the load at the intended speed. It is a direct measurement of neuromuscular fatigue. When the bar starts slowing down and you are still trying to move it fast, That's proximity to failure. That's the zone where mechanical tension is highest and adaptation is triggered. If every rep of every set looks the same speed from rep 1 to rep 10, you are not training hard enough. 0 to 2 reps in reserve means the last reps are a fight. They should look like a fight. Here's the protocol. 2 to 3 sessions per week per muscle, 48 to 72 hours apart. Upper back, wide grip, flared elbows, full scapular retraction at end range. Lats, neutral scapula, close grip rows or wide pull downs, elbow drives down toward the hip. Biceps, supinated curls, brachioradialis, hammer and reverse curls, no swinging. 2 sets per exercise, 0 to 2 RIR, 3 to 5 minutes rest bilateral, 1 to 2 minutes between sides unilateral. If you stall for 3 to 4 weeks, remove a set. Apply this or keep looking small. Your choice.